This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and today we're in Texas, introducing a woman who understands that true leadership isn't about the title on your door, it's about the standards that you set up for yourself. With over 14 years of healthcare leadership experience, an MBA, and a background as a licensed occupational therapist, she really bridges the gap between clinical behavior and corporate performance. Brooke, thanks so much for joining us here today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm going to start off a little bit about yourself. I mean, you've spent over a decade really in healthcare leadership and multi site operations. Was there a specific moment in your clinical career as an occupational therapist when you realized that maybe the human performance obstacles that you saw in patients were maybe the same ones holding back executives in the boardroom?
Absolutely. I learned that early on in my career. I spent 14 years in the healthcare industry, and it can get very chaotic and a lot of pressure and a lot of stress on, your coworkers and your employees, and it's internally exhausting. So I started becoming a leadership and wellness coach through my own journey. I started navigating through my own type of growth personally, professionally, and mentally. And it wasn't until I started becoming on the director level in the healthcare that I realized how much help we need.
I would imagine you've been there, you've done that. I mean, some business coaches have an MBA, but very few probably are also a licensed OT. How does your understanding of human behavior and functional mechanics allow you to diagnose a performance issue in a leader that maybe traditional business strategists possibly would miss?
Well, that's a great question. So, honestly, a lot of people are operating on they're high functioning, right? But they're just internally exhausted. They look confident and successful on the outside, but behind the scenes, they're running on self-doubt, overthinking, and pressure just to keep it all together. So what I do is it's less about teaching them what to do. It's more about helping them get out of their own way. And during the interview process, you're learning about your client and their identity and where they stand in life. And based off of that is where you determine what they need.
Interesting. I mean, you combine the financial realities of an MBA with a deeply human clinical perspective. I mean, how do you help a growth minded individual balance the cold, hard numbers of their career with the mental and emotional well being required to sustain high level output?
It's really about self-leadership. So that's what I primarily focus on because it doesn't matter what's going on externally. It's all inside. So when you focus on self-leadership, it basically is how you show up in the world when no one is watching. So everyone's capable, my clients are smart, they're driven on paper, they're incredibly impressive, but they're dealing constant internal struggles with self-doubt and pressure and inconsistency. So focusing on their identity, their personal standards, and their discipline, once you focus on those and address those and the mentality that is aligned with those three pillars, that's when the change really happens. So I help build stronger internal structures, like internal standards and your self-awareness and the discipline to follow through with things. So it's not really anything to have to do with on the outside, right? We're focusing on you as a person and who you are and helping them identify that.
It's that internal struggle that each one of us has, even though we don't show it on the outside. I mean, speaking of high level output, you've stated that people with high standards consistently outperform really in every area of life. So, for someone out there maybe who feels stuck or stagnant, can you help them audit their current personal standards to find maybe the leaks that are draining their potential?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it's your identity that drives your decisions. So if you're unclear with who you are and how you operate, you're most likely going to be second guessing yourself. You're going to be operating on self-doubt and you're going to be pressured instead of living intentionally. So once I interview my client and I really learn where they're coming from and who they are and focus on their identity, everything can shift.
Everything can shift. You have to know what your identity is. But as we know, I mean, for myself, high performers are notorious for pushing until they simply break. Do you coach your clients to raise their standards without maybe falling into the dangerous cycle of perfectionism or burnout even?
Absolutely, of course. So when you're overperforming and you're trying to be perfect and you're overthinking and you're overdoing, you're going above and beyond, regardless of the environment that you're working on, it's usually because of that internal conflict, like we mentioned before, right? So you could be lowering your standards in the moment that matters. It could look like you know what to do, but you don't actually do it or follow through with it. So once we determine what's holding you back and break that down into several different layers like an onion, then we'll be able to address what type of mindset and thought processes that you're having to create your outcomes.
Interesting. I mean, so you're talking, I mean, obviously a person didn't become how they are overnight, so they're not going to change overnight. It's a process. There's layers that you have to get through. I mean, you mentioned self-leadership before. This is the rise of personal leadership. I mean, in a world that is obsessed with managing others, why do you believe that self-leadership is the only true foundation for sustainable career and even relationship success?
A lot of people, they rely on external validation and direction, but the real growth is how you can guide yourself through clarity and integrity. So personal leadership, self-leadership is how you're going to be making your decisions in life. So it's how you show up when no one is watching, and I'll repeat that over and over again because it's so truly important, because you don't want to put on a show if it doesn't align with who you are, right? So it's when no one is watching, how are you operating in life? And so that's where it stems from. If you're making poor decisions about your own life, you're not going to be able to guide someone else properly. So it's all about standards, being aware, and having the discipline to move forward.
As we all know, decisions are really a key factor when it comes to success, but we have to be able to know who we are before we make great decisions about our life. I mean, let's face it, leadership requires discipline. Discipline is often viewed as a maybe a restrictive chore, but you see it as a tool for freedom. Do you help your clients kind of reframe their relationship with discipline so that it becomes maybe a fuel for their growth rather than a source of stress? Tell me about that.
Absolutely. It's pretty parallel with negative self-talk, right? So it's like reframing negative self-talk and reframing the what you see as the understanding of discipline and using it as useful information that directly impacts the decisions that you make in life. So discipline, like motivation, right? Motivation is a feeling, right? Your feelings fluctuate. It's like a roller coaster, so you can't rely on motivation to do life, right? Because if
Right.
your emotions are up and down, your responsibilities are going to be up and down too. And so you can't rely on your emotions to do things. So you have to be disciplined. So whether you're sad, whether you're stressed, or whatever emotion that you're feeling, identifying it and then still completing everything you need to do tired, doing your work tired, taking care of your children even though you're frustrated, going and visiting your parents even when you're sad. It's the discipline in life that makes all the difference.
We've spoken a lot about the internal changes a person has to make, but you also work with leaders kind of to refine their presence outside. For a high performing individual who has the skills, they're smart, but they lack maybe the room commanding presence of a top tier executive, are there strategies that you can work on together to kind of help them?
You can have the most intelligent talented people in the room, but there's always going to be a gap between who they think they are and how they act. And it's bridging that gap and shortening that gap so everything is in alignment. So you may have someone who's like, wanting a stronger presence, right? Wants to, have more power, wants to be able to persuade, negotiate, all these things. It's not necessarily through your words. It's how you present yourself. So when you're addressing, the pillars, the internal standards, your awareness and the discipline, you know, once we address those things and we build a basic foundation off of those three pillars and the work that we do within those three, you will automatically, your confidence levels will become more stable. And so when your confidence is more stable, you can glow, you walk different, your postures can show differently, right? So it's a natural progression of presence when you do address those specific pillars, and it naturally changes over time. And then there's aesthetically there's things that you can do that are tangible and change the way you present yourself as well.
Making sure your internal matches your external takes a little bit of work, obviously. Brooke, you say that development of others for you is really personal. Why is a disruptive level of accountability necessary sometimes for someone who is already successful, but they want to reach that next elusive level of performance?
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to disrupt any of your normal typical patterns in order to succeed and grow, right? So you could be extremely successful, you could be, top tier, all these great things, but you're still not happy and you still want to reach that next level. That's it's a very intricate, time consuming type of process, right? So it doesn't happen overnight. But you have to literally break it down to the very core to understand their mindset, the thought processes, why their why, all of that. So there's a lot of details that go into it to ultimately get the outcome that they want. So it's not like a one size fit all type of thing. So in order for me to tell you how it's done, it's so different from each individual, and it's a customized, tailored type of program. So it's not like a blueprint, cookie cutter type of program. It's really based on your specific needs. And so some people need more attention and, more disrupting, so to speak, and some people need less. So it just depends on their needs. But someone who's super successful and on paper pretty much has everything, there's a reason why they're here, right? There's a reason why they're asking for my help. They're not, no one knows what it is except for them. So in order to figure that out, we're together, we break it down. And sometimes, my clients do break down because of it. It's hard to admit, it's hard to face sometimes, especially when you're at that level of success. Sometimes you're not open to change as much as you say you are. And it's really about working the program and understanding where they're coming from and their why in order to adjust to help them change.
Obviously, they weren't able to get to that point by themselves, and that's why an outside set of eyes as well as a perspective can help so many people. Lastly, as we move through 2026, what is a fundamental shift in mindset that you want others to adopt to ensure they aren't just surviving this current economy, but operating really at their highest possible identity?
Everyone just needs to, and I say everyone because everybody does this to the level degree that they want to change or need help. That's a whole different story. But 2026, this year, it's it's so chaotic. There's so many distractions, including social media and all of these things that are interfering. And it's called noise, right? So we need to quiet the noise. But my recommendation or advice that I would give anyone who wants to succeed at a higher level in 2026 is focus on yourself. Focus on your personal leadership. and whatever that looks like for you. Because I don't fix burnout. I expose the misalignment, and understanding who you are as a person without any external influence is the most important thing right now.
So, no distractions. That 2026 has been known for already, but really focus on yourself. I think that's great advice. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen right there, and you can see our website where you can learn more about this strategist for high performers. I'm the founder of the personal leadership movement, really, who is proving that when you raise your standards, you change your life. You too can elevate with Brooke. This is Gary Atencio with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.